The first shot rang out just as Dr. Zara Anderson stepped off the stagecoach into the dusty main street of Keeler, California, causing her to drop her medical bag and duck instinctively behind the nearest water trough. "Welcome to Keeler, Doc." The stagecoach driver called out with a laugh, apparently unfazed by the gunfire. "Don't you worry none, just the Henderson boys celebrating payday. They ain't aiming at nothing but the sky." Zara brushed the dust from her navy traveling dress and retrieved her bag, surveying what was to be her new home. The Sierra Nevada mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow despite it being April 1878. Keeler itself was a modest collection of wooden buildings straddling the eastern shore of what locals called Owens Lake, though from what she could see, it was more of a vast salt flat than a proper lake. After 3 weeks of travel from Philadelphia, she'd finally arrived at her destination, a frontier town in desperate need of a doctor. The telegram she'd received had been brief but persuasive. "Town of 800 souls, no doctor within 50 miles, will provide office and living quarters. Reply if interested." She'd been interested. More than interested, she'd been desperate for a fresh start after the scandal at Philadelphia General Hospital had effectively ended her career there. A woman doctor was barely tolerated in the best of circumstances, but a woman doctor who openly challenged the chief of surgery's treatment methods was apparently unforgivable. "You must be Dr. Anderson," a voice called, and Zara turned to see a stout woman in her 50s hurrying toward her. "I'm Martha Wilkins, the mayor's wife. We're so pleased you've arrived safely." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. I'm glad to be here." Zara offered her hand, which the older woman shook vigorously. "We've got your rooms all prepared above the new clinic. It ain't much, but it's clean and private." Martha gestured down the street. "Let me show you the way. You must be exhausted from your journey." As they walked, Zara took in the town the general store with its wooden porch where old men played checkers, the saloon from which piano music drifted, and the small church at the far end of the street. Children played in the spaces between buildings, and women called to one another as they went about their daily tasks. "How long has Keeler been without a doctor?" Zara asked. "Going on 8 months now. Doc Miller passed last summer. His heart gave out. We've been making do with Mrs. Holloway, the midwife, and sending the serious cases to Bishop when we can, but that's nearly a full day's ride." Martha led her to a freshly painted white building with a new sign that simply read "Doctor" hanging above the door. The town council fixed this place up special. Used to be the old assayer's office before the silver mine played out. Inside was a clean, simple space, an examination room with a table, cabinets for supplies, and a small waiting area. A door at the back led to a staircase. "Your living quarters are up there, 2 rooms and a small kitchen. There's an outhouse out back, and the bathhouse is 2 doors down if you want a proper soak." Zara nodded appreciatively. "This will do nicely, thank you. Rest up tonight. Tomorrow we'll introduce you around proper. Word's already spread that the new doctor's arrived. Expect folks to be curious, we ain't never had a lady doctor before." After Martha left, Zara climbed the stairs to her new home. The front room was simply furnished with a small table, 2 chairs, and a cast iron stove. The bedroom contained a narrow bed, a washstand, and a wardrobe. Someone had placed a vase of wildflowers on the bedside table, and the windows had been thrown open to air out the rooms. Zara unpacked her clothes and medical instruments, arranging everything neatly. The simplicity of her new life was exactly what she needed, a place where she could practice medicine without the politics and prejudice she'd faced in Philadelphia. Here, she would be judged by her skill alone, or so she hoped. The next morning, Zara was awakened by the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly in a practical gray skirt and white shirtwaist, pinning her long auburn hair into a neat bun at the nape of her neck. Downstairs, she discovered a rangy man in his early 30s installing shelves in the examination room. "Oh. Pardon me, madam, I mean doctor," he said, tipping his hat. "Mayor asked me to finish these shelves before you opened for business. Didn't mean to wake you. It's quite all right, I should be up anyway." Zara observed the man's work. "You've done a fine job." "Those will be perfect for my medical supplies." "Name's Xavier Young, madam. Most folks call me Zav." He had the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His blue eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and a week's worth of beard shadowed his jaw. "Doctor." "Zara Anderson," she replied, offering her hand, which he shook after hastily wiping his palm on his trousers. "You're younger than I expected," he said, then looked immediately chagrined. "I beg your pardon, that wasn't proper. I'm 28, Mr. Young, and I assure you I'm fully qualified. I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania and completed a residency at Philadelphia General Hospital." "No offense meant," he said, holding up his hands. "It's just when the town council said they'd hired a doctor from back east, I pictured some old biddy with a face like a dried apple." Despite herself, Zara laughed. "Well, I hope I'm not a disappointment." "No, madam, definitely not that." His smile was warm, and Zara found herself returning it before remembering her professional demeanor. "Will you be finished soon? I'd like to organize my supplies and prepare to receive patients." "Just about done. Got these last 2 shelves to hang and I'll be out of your hair." He turned back to his work, and Zara busied herself with unpacking the crates that had arrived ahead of her. Within the hour, Xav had completed his task and departed, leaving Zara to arrange her clinic as she saw fit. By mid-morning, she was ready to receive patients, and it didn't take long for the first ones to arrive. Her first day was busy with minor complaints: Mrs. Donovan's arthritis, the blacksmith's burned hand, a cowhand with a dislocated shoulder, and 3 children with various scrapes and sniffles. Zara treated each with careful attention, aware that her reputation in Keeler would be built on these first impressions. "You got a gentle touch, Doc," said the cowhand as she finished bandaging his newly relocated shoulder. "Better than old Doc Miller, God rest his soul. He'd just yank and cuss till something popped back in place." "Medicine doesn't have to be brutal to be effective," Zara replied. "Rest that arm in the sling for at least a week and come back if the pain increases or you develop a fever." By late afternoon, Zara was exhausted but satisfied with her first day's work. She just closed up the clinic when a wagon pulled up outside, and a harried-looking man jumped down, racing to her door. "Doc, you gotta come quick. It's my boy, he's been thrown from a horse." Zara grabbed her medical bag. "How far? Our ranch is about 3 miles out. The Flying Y. The Flying Y, are you Mr. Young?" she asked, recognizing the name. "Yes, madam, Xavier Young. We met this morning." His face was pale with worry. "Please, my son Tommy's hurt bad." "I'll come right away," Zara said, climbing up beside him on the wagon seat. Xav snapped the reins and the horses broke into a trot. "I've got 3 kids," he explained as they rumbled out of town. "Tommy's 12, Emma's 10, and little Jack's 6. Their mama passed 2 years ago, consumption. I've been doing my best, but—" His voice trailed off. "What happened to Tommy?" Zara asked, wanting to focus his mind on facts rather than fear. "He was breaking a new colt, something I told him not to do alone. Neighbor found him and brought word to me in town. My foreman's with him now." The Flying Y was a modest spread with a well-maintained ranch house, a barn, and several outbuildings. A Mexican man was waiting in the yard and hurried to help Zara down from the wagon. "He's inside, senor. No broken bones that I could find, but he has not woken up." Xav led Zara into the house, where a boy lay still on a bed in the front room. 2 other children hovered nearby, a girl with her father's blue eyes and a small boy clutching a wooden horse. "Emma, Jack, this is Dr. Anderson. She's going to help Tommy. Why don't you go help Maria in the kitchen?" The children reluctantly left, and Zara approached her patient. Tommy Young was a gangly boy with a nasty bruise forming on his temple. Zara checked his pulse and breathing, then carefully examined his head and neck. "His pulse is steady and his pupils react to light. That's good. He has a concussion, but I don't believe there's any bleeding inside his skull." She continued her examination, checking for other injuries. 2 ribs are bruised, possibly cracked but not broken through. His right wrist is sprained. Xav watched her work, his face a mask of worry. "Will he be all right?" "I believe so, but we'll need to watch him closely. Head injuries can be unpredictable." Zara opened her bag and removed several bottles. "I'm going to make a poultice for that bump, and I'll leave you with something for the pain when he wakes." She worked efficiently, cleaning and treating Tommy's various injuries. As she was finishing, the boy stirred and opened his eyes. "Pa," he murmured. Xav was at his side in an instant. "I'm here, son. You took quite a fall." Tommy's eyes moved to Zara. Who are you? I'm Dr. Anderson, the new town doctor. She smiled reassuringly. You have a concussion and some bruised ribs, but you're going to be fine as long as you rest and follow my instructions. A lady doctor. Tommy looked confused. Yes, and a very good one, Zav said firmly. Now do as she says. Zara gave Zav detailed instructions for caring for Tommy, including when to administer the pain medicine and what warning signs to watch for. Someone should stay with him through the night, waking him every 2 hours to make sure he's alert and responsive. I'll sit with him, Zav said. I'll come back tomorrow to check on him. Zara packed her bag. If he develops a fever or his headache worsens, send for me immediately. As she prepared to leave, Emma and Jack reappeared with a middle-aged Mexican woman who introduced herself as Maria, the housekeeper who helped care for the children. The doctor says Tommy will be fine, Zav told them, but he needs to rest quietly for a few days. Can we see him? Emma asked. Briefly, Zara said, but don't excite him. The children tiptoed into the room and Zara found herself smiling at their obvious affection for their brother. Despite the circumstances, there was something heartwarming about the young family. I should return to town before dark, she said. I'll drive you, Zav offered, but Zara shook her head. You need to stay with Tommy. Perhaps Maria could drive me. I can't drive the wagon, Senora, Maria said apologetically. I can take you. Emma volunteered eagerly. Zav frowned. Emma, you're too young to drive into town alone. I'll go with her, Pa, Tommy said, attempting to sit up before Zara gently pushed him back down. You're not going anywhere, young man. Zav ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn between his responsibilities. I don't want to impose, but would you consider staying the night, Doctor? We have a spare room. That way you could check on Tommy again in the morning before heading back to town. Zara hesitated, aware of how such an arrangement might appear to the townsfolk, but medical necessity outweighed social considerations. Very well, Mr. Young. I'll stay to monitor Tommy overnight. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. Emma can show you to the guest room whenever you're ready. After ensuring Tommy was comfortable, Zara allowed Emma to lead her to a small but tidy bedroom at the back of the house. This was Ma's sewing room, Emma explained, lighting a lamp. Pa turned it into a guest room after she died, but nobody ever stays here. It's lovely, Zara said, noting the handmade quilt on the bed and the faded floral curtains at the window. Your mother must have been very talented. Emma nodded solemnly. She made all our clothes and taught me to sew before she got sick. She traced a pattern on the quilt with her finger. Pa tries, but he doesn't know how to do girl things. It must be difficult without your mother, sometimes. Maria helps, but she has to go home to her own family at night. Emma looked up hopefully. Do you know how to braid hair? Pa's braids always fall out. Zara smiled. I do. Perhaps I could show him a better technique before I leave. Emma's face lit up. Would you? That would be wonderful. Later, after a simple dinner of beans, cornbread, and stewed apples, Zara checked on Tommy again. He was awake and alert, a good sign. She sat with him while Zav put Jack to bed, using the time to ask the boy questions that would assess his mental faculties. What's the last thing you remember before you fell? Tommy thought for a moment. The colt reared up when a rabbit ran by. I was trying to stay on, but he twisted funny. And you know you shouldn't have been breaking that horse alone. He had the grace to look ashamed. Yes, madam. Pa's been too busy to help. What with spring roundup coming, I thought I could surprise him. You certainly surprised him, but not in the way you intended, Zara said dryly. Tommy managed a weak smile. Guess I won't try that again. Zav returned and sent Emma to bed, then settled in a chair beside Tommy's bed. I'll take the first watch, he told Zara. You should get some rest. Zara nodded. Wake me in 4 hours and I'll take over. Remember to rouse him every 2 hours. In the guest room, Zara removed her outer clothes and loosened her corset before lying down on the unfamiliar bed. She was more tired than she'd realized, and despite her intention to review Tommy's condition in her mind, she fell asleep almost instantly. She woke to a gentle knock on the door. Zav's voice came softly through the wood. Dr. Anderson, it's been 4 hours. Zara quickly dressed and opened the door. Zav stood in the hallway looking exhausted. How is he? She asked, sleeping peacefully. He woke easily both times I roused him, knew his name and where he was. Good. Get some rest, Mr. Young. I'll watch him until morning. Zav hesitated. I feel bad leaving you to it. Don't. You've been working all day and worrying about your son. Sleep for a few hours, he nodded gratefully. Thank you, doctor, truly. Zara spent the rest of the night in the chair beside Tommy's bed, waking him as instructed and noting his responses. By morning, she was confident the boy was out of immediate danger. Zav appeared at dawn, looking somewhat refreshed. How is he? Much better. His pupils are equal and responsive, and he's oriented to time and place. The swelling has already started to go down. Tommy was awake and hungry, another good sign. Maria arrived and prepared breakfast for everyone, including Zara. I really should get back to town, Zara said as they finished eating. There may be patients waiting. I'll drive you, Zav insisted. It's the least I can do. As they prepared to leave, Emma approached Zara with a hairbrush. Could you show Pa how to braid my hair before you go? Zara glanced at Zav, who looked simultaneously embarrassed and hopeful. Of course, she said, taking the brush. She demonstrated on Emma's long blonde hair, explaining each step to Zav. It's all in the tension, not too tight or it will hurt, but not too loose or it will fall out. Zav watched intently, then attempted to replicate the braid on the other side of Emma's head. His large, calloused hands were surprisingly gentle as he worked. Like this? He asked, holding the strands awkwardly. Almost. Zara guided his fingers. Cross this strand over, then add a bit more hair before crossing again. After a few attempts, Zav managed a respectable braid. Emma examined herself in a small mirror and beamed. It's perfect, thank you, Dr. Anderson. You're welcome, Emma. Zara turned to Jack, who'd been watching quietly. And how are you this morning, young man? I'm well, thank you, he said politely, then added, Are you going to marry our pa? Zara froze and Zav turned scarlet. Jack, that's not, you can't just, he cleared his throat. Dr. Anderson is here as Tommy's physician, nothing more. But Emma says a lot of things, Zav cut in, shooting his daughter a warning look. Now go check on your brother while I take the doctor back to town. The children retreated and Zav turned to Zara. I apologize for that, kids say the darndest things. No need to apologize, Zara said, though she could feel her cheeks warming. It's perfectly natural for children to wonder about such things, especially when they've lost a parent. The wagon ride back to town was quiet, both of them seemingly lost in thought. As they approached Keeler, Zav finally broke the silence. I want to thank you properly for what you did for Tommy, and for staying the night. It meant a great deal to have someone with medical knowledge there. I was simply doing my job, Mr. Young. Even so, I'm grateful, he hesitated. Would you consider coming to Sunday dinner at the ranch next week? The children would love to see you again, and it would give Tommy a chance to thank you properly when he's feeling better. Zara considered the invitation. She should refuse. Maintaining professional distance from patients was important, but there was something about the Young family that tugged at her heart. That's very kind of you. I'll consider it. They arrived at her clinic to find 3 patients already waiting. Zav helped her down from the wagon, his hand lingering on hers perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Until next time, Dr. Anderson. Mr. Young, she acknowledged with a nod, then turned to her waiting patients, already slipping back into her professional role. The following week passed in a blur of activity as Zara established herself in Keeler. Word of her competence spread quickly, and she found herself treating everything from minor ailments to a complicated birth that lasted through the night. Mayor Wilkins officially welcomed her at the town council meeting, and the local newspaper published a small article announcing her arrival. Not everyone was welcoming, of course. She overheard whispers questioning whether a woman could handle the rigors of frontier medicine, and a few of the older men in town refused to consult her, preferring to treat themselves with whiskey and home remedies. But overall, Keeler seemed willing to give her a chance. Xavier Young appeared at her clinic 3 days after Tommy's accident, bringing the boy for a follow-up examination. The swelling's completely gone and his vision is normal, Zara noted as she checked Tommy's eyes. How's the headache? Mostly gone, except when I move too fast, Tommy admitted. That's to be expected. You can resume light activities, but no riding or strenuous chores for another week. She looked at Zav, and definitely no breaking horses. Zav grinned. Don't worry, he's not getting near a horse without supervision until he's 30. Pa, Tommy protested. 25 then. After the examination, Zav lingered while Tommy waited outside. The Sunday dinner invitation still stands, he said, Emma's been talking about it all week, Zara smiled. In that case, I accept. What time should I arrive after church? Around 1 o'clock. I'll be there. Sunday arrived clear and warm. Zara attended the small church service where Reverend Powell introduced her to the congregation. Afterward, she returned to her rooms to change into a fresh dress, a cornflower blue that brought out the green in her eyes, before setting out for the Flying Y. She decided to ride rather than take the buggy she'd recently purchased, enjoying the freedom of being on horseback. The landscape around Keeler was stark but beautiful, with the mountains forming a dramatic backdrop to the east and the vast lake beds stretching to the west. As she approached the Flying Y, she saw the children playing in the yard. Emma spotted her first and ran to meet her, hair flying behind her in two neat braids. "Dr. Anderson, you came." "I said I would," Zara replied, dismounting. "And your father's braiding has improved, I see." Emma beamed. "He practices every morning. Says if he can rope a steer, he should be able to braid hair." Zav appeared from the barn, looking more polished than Zara had yet seen him. He'd trimmed his beard and wore a clean blue shirt tucked into his best jeans. "Welcome, Dr. Anderson," he said, taking the reins of her horse. "I'll put your mare in the barn. The kids are excited you're here. Been cleaning the house all morning." Inside, the ranch house had indeed been thoroughly cleaned. The main room smelled of beeswax and pine, and fresh wildflowers stood in a mason jar on the table, which was set with the family's best dishes. Tommy greeted her proudly. "I helped set the table. Pa says I'm fully recovered." "Almost fully recovered," Zara corrected. "But you're certainly looking much better." Jack shyly presented her with a drawing he'd made of her tending to Tommy. The figures were childish stick drawings, but he'd carefully colored her dress and hair. "This is wonderful, Jack, thank you." Maria had prepared a feast: roasted chicken, potatoes, spring greens, and fresh bread. For dessert, there was apple pie with cream. "This is delicious," Zara said as they ate. "You're fortunate to have Maria's cooking." "She only comes 3 days a week," Emma said. "The rest of the time, Pa cooks. He makes really good beans, but everything else is kind of." She wrinkled her nose. "Emma," Zav warned, but his tone was light. "Well, it's true. Remember when you tried to make biscuits and they were so hard Tommy used them for target practice?" Everyone laughed, including Zav. "I never claimed to be a chef. I keep my children fed and reasonably clean. That's about the extent of my domestic talents." After dinner, Emma convinced Zara to join them for a walk to the creek that ran along the edge of the property. Tommy and Jack raced ahead, while Emma walked between Zara and her father, chattering about school and her friends. "Miss Jenkins says I have a talent for arithmetic," she said proudly, "but Tommy's better at history." "Education is important," Zara said. "I wouldn't have become a doctor without years of study." "Was it hard becoming a doctor?" Emma asked. "Especially being a lady, very hard," Zara admitted. "There were many people who didn't think women should be doctors, some still don't." "That's silly," Emma declared. "Ma always said women were smarter than men anyway," Zav coughed. "Your mother had some strong opinions." "But she was right most of the time," Emma insisted. "That she was," Zav agreed with a soft smile. Sarah had a way of seeing right to the heart of things. They reached the creek, where Tommy and Jack were already skipping stones across the water. Zav found a smooth, flat rock and handed it to Zara. "Ever skip stones, doctor?" "Not since I was a girl," she admitted. "It's like riding a horse you never really forget." He demonstrated, sending a stone bouncing 5 times across the water. "Your turn." Zara's first attempt sank immediately, earning her teasing from the children. Her second did marginally better, skipping twice before disappearing. "You need to adjust your angle," Zav said, moving behind her. "May I?" At her nod, he positioned her arm, his hand warm on her wrist. "Like this, with a flick of the wrist at the end." Zara tried again, and this time the stone skipped 4 times. The children cheered. "Well done, Dr. Anderson," Tommy called. "Call me Zara when I'm not being your doctor," she found herself saying. It was improper, perhaps, but the formality seemed out of place in this setting, with the sun warm on her face and the children's laughter filling the air. They spent an hour by the creek before returning to the house for coffee and more of Maria's apple pie. As the afternoon waned, Zara realized she needed to return to town before dark. "This has been lovely," she told Zav as he walked her to her horse. "Thank you for inviting me." "The pleasure was ours," he said. The kids haven't had this much fun in ages. They're wonderful children. You've done a fine job with them." Xav looked pleased but shook his head. "I do my best, but there's a lot I don't know about raising them right, especially Emma." "A girl needs a woman's guidance. You seem to be managing admirably." "Some things, sure, but there are conversations coming that I'm not equipped for," he sighed. "Sarah would know what to do." Zara thought of her own mother, who had guided her through the complexities of womanhood with practical wisdom and unfailing support. "Perhaps I could help," she offered. "With Emma, I mean, if questions arise that you find difficult to address." Zav's expression brightened. "You do that." "Of course, it's important for young women to have accurate information and someone they can talk to." "Thank you." His voice was sincere. "That means more than I can say." As Zav helped her mount, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared values and mutual respect. "Will you come again?" he asked. "The children would love it, so would I." Zara knew she should maintain professional distance, but the warmth of the young family had already begun to penetrate the walls she'd built around her heart. "I'd like that," she said simply. Over the next several weeks, Zara found herself drawn more deeply into the life of Keeler and, particularly, into the lives of the young family. She visited the Flying Y whenever her schedule allowed, sometimes for Sunday dinner and occasionally just to check on Tommy's progress or to spend time with Emma. The girl had taken to following Zara around the ranch, asking endless questions about medicine and what it was like to be a doctor. Zara, remembering her own childhood curiosity, answered patiently and began bringing medical books for Emma to read. "You're encouraging her," Zav said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset while the children played in the yard. "She talks about nothing but becoming a doctor now." "Would that displease you?" Zara asked. "If your daughter pursued medicine," Zav considered the question. "No," he said finally. "I want my children to follow their dreams, whatever those might be. It just never occurred to me that Emma might have ambitions beyond Keeler. She's bright and determined. With proper education, she could do anything. Like you did." Zara smiled wryly. "My path wasn't easy. I hope hers would be smoother." "Tell me about your path," Zav said, "if you don't mind sharing." Zara rarely spoke of her past, but something about the quiet evening and Zav's genuine interest loosened her tongue. "My father was a physician in Philadelphia. He encouraged my interest in medicine from an early age, even though my mother worried it would make me unmarriageable." She smiled at the memory. "He died when I was 16, but by then I was determined to follow in his footsteps." "And you did?" "Yes, though not without obstacles. The women's medical college was one thing. Being surrounded by like-minded women was actually quite wonderful. But the residency at Philadelphia General..." She paused, the memories still painful. "Many of the male doctors and most of the administrators resented my presence. They gave me the worst assignments, questioned every decision, and waited eagerly for me to fail. But you didn't fail." "No. I excelled, which only made some of them resent me more." She hadn't intended to share the full story, but Zav's quiet attention drew it from her. "The final straw came when I challenged the chief of surgery's treatment of a young woman with puerperal fever. He insisted on bloodletting, which I knew was outdated and dangerous. I advocated for the antiseptic methods Dr. Lister had developed. What happened? The chief overruled me. The patient died." Zara's voice caught. "I reported him to the hospital board, presented research supporting the antiseptic approach. They dismissed my complaint and suggested I was too emotional for medicine." Her mouth twisted. "When my residency ended, there were suddenly no positions available to me in Philadelphia." "So you came west." "So I came west," she agreed. "Where people care more about whether you can save lives than whether you wear skirts." Zav was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I think you're an excellent doctor. Keeler is lucky to have you." His simple statement warmed her more than elaborate praise would have. "Thank you." As spring turned to summer, Zara found herself spending more and more time at the Flying Y. She helped Emma start a small herb garden, showing her which plants had medicinal properties. She taught Jack to identify constellations in the night sky. She discussed books with Tommy, who had inherited his mother's love of reading, and through it all, she grew closer to Zav. They had long conversations on the porch after the children were in bed. talking about everything from cattle breeding to politics. He told her about growing up in California, the son of a 49er who'd come for gold but stayed for ranching. She shared stories of Philadelphia society and her medical training. Zara knew that tongues were wagging in Keeler about her frequent visits to the Young ranch. Martha Wilkins had hinted as much during a checkup, saying with studied casualness, "You seem to have taken quite an interest in the Young family, doctor." Tommy's head injury required follow-up care, Zara had replied, deliberately misunderstanding. And the children are bright and curious about medicine. Martha had given her a knowing look, but didn't press further. The truth was more complicated than Zara cared to admit, even to herself. She had indeed taken an interest in the Young family, all of them. The children had worked their way into her heart with their openness and enthusiasm. And Zav was unlike any man she'd ever known. He respected her profession without being intimidated by it. He was honest and direct, without the polished veneer of the Eastern men she'd known. He was a devoted father who wasn't afraid to admit his limitations. And when he looked at her with those blue eyes, something inside her quickened. But she was a doctor first, and Keeler needed her focus and dedication. Romance was a luxury she wasn't sure she could afford, especially with a patient's father. The situation came to a head in late July when a measles outbreak struck Keeler. Several children fell ill simultaneously, and Zara worked around the clock to treat them and prevent the spread of the disease. On the third day of the outbreak, Zav appeared at her clinic, his face grim. "Jack's sick, high fever, rash starting, Emma too." Zara gathered her supplies. "I'll come right away." At the Flying Y, she found both younger children feverish and miserable. The rash had begun on Jack's face and was spreading downward, while Emma's was just starting behind her ears. "It's definitely measles," Zara confirmed after examining them. "Have you had it, Zav, as a child? Tommy too, a few years back." "Good, you'll need to keep the sick children isolated." The disease spreads through the air. She prepared a solution of sodium bicarbonate for the itching and left willow bark tea for the fever. "Keep them cool and make sure they drink plenty of fluids. The fever should peak in about 3 days, then gradually subside." Zav looked overwhelmed. "I don't know if I can manage both of them alone. Maria's grandson is sick too. She's staying with her daughter's family." "I'll stay," Zara decided, "at least until the worst has passed." And so she moved temporarily into the Flying Y, sleeping in the guest room and devoting herself to the children's care. Zav continued to run the ranch but spent every spare moment helping, bringing cool water, changing sweat-soaked sheets, and reading stories to distract the children from their discomfort. The days blurred together as Zara monitored fevers, applied compresses, and coaxed broth into reluctant patients. Emma's case was straightforward, the fever breaking on the 4th day. But Jack developed a secondary infection pneumonia that required more intensive care. For 2 nights, Zara barely slept, sitting beside Jack's bed as he struggled to breathe. She applied mustard plasters to his chest and administered small doses of ipecac to loosen the congestion. Zav stayed with them, his face drawn with worry. "Will he be all right?" he asked on the 2nd night as Jack's breathing finally seemed to ease. "I believe the crisis has passed," Zara said, though exhaustion made her voice uncertain. "His fever is coming down. You saved him." Zav took her hand, his own trembling slightly. "I don't know how to thank you." "There's no need," she began, but the room suddenly tilted. She put a hand to her forehead, feeling lightheaded. "Zara," Zav's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right?" "Just tired," she managed, but her legs gave way beneath her. Zav caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her easily in his strong arms. "You're exhausted. You haven't slept in days." "I need to check Jack's breathing," she protested weakly. "I'll check it. You're going to rest, doctor's orders." He carried her to the guest room and gently laid her on the bed. "Sleep now. I'll wake you if there's any change." Zara wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her, succumbing to exhaustion almost as soon as her head touched the pillow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment she was disoriented, then remembered Jack's pneumonia, her collapse. She sat up quickly. "Jack is much better," Zav's voice came from the doorway. He stood there holding a cup of coffee, looking almost as tired as she felt. His fever broke around dawn. He's sleeping peacefully now. Relief flooded through her. "Thank God," Thank you, Zav corrected, crossing to hand her the coffee. You've barely slept for days taking care of my children. Zara sipped the coffee gratefully. How long did I sleep? About 6 hours. It's just past noon. 6 hours. I should check on both children. They're fine, I promise. Emma's fever is gone completely and she's already complaining of boredom. Jack's still weak, but his breathing is much easier. Zara relaxed slightly. That's good to hear. Zav sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. Zara, I need to say something. Her heart quickened at his use of her first name. Yes, these past months having you in our lives. It's changed things, changed me. He looked down, then back at her, his blue eyes earnest. I haven't felt this way since Sarah was alive. I didn't think I would again. Zav, please let me finish. I know you're the town doctor and there are probably rules about doctors and patients' families. I know you came west to practice medicine, not to get entangled with a rancher and his 3 kids, but I can't help how I feel. He took her hand. I'm falling in love with you, Zara Anderson, and unless I'm completely misreading things, I think you might feel something for me too. Zara's heart pounded. She should maintain professional distance. She should remind him that she was here as a doctor, nothing more. She should. You're not misreading things, she whispered, his face lit up with hope. Then there's a chance for us. Zara hesitated, years of caution warring with the feelings that had grown inside her. It's complicated, Zav. My work is important, I know. I would never ask you to give it up. And the children love you already. Surely you've noticed, she had noticed. The way Emma looked at her with admiration, how Jack sought her approval, even Tommy's grudging respect. People will talk, she said, making one last attempt at resistance. Zav smiled. People already talk. This is a small town. He was right, of course. Her frequent visits to the Young ranch had not gone unnoticed in Keeler. What exactly are you proposing? She asked, needing clarity. For now, that we acknowledge what's happening between us, that we court properly so I can show you how serious my intentions are. He squeezed her hand. I'm not asking for decisions today, Zara, just a chance. Put that way, it was hard to refuse, and the truth was she didn't want to refuse. All right, she said softly. A chance. The joy that spread across Zav's face was worth any risk. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. That's all I ask. By the time August arrived, Jack and Emma were fully recovered from the measles and life at the Flying Y had returned to normal, except that now, Zav was officially courting Zara. He came to town twice a week, sometimes bringing the children, sometimes alone. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, attended church socials together, and once even traveled to Bishop for a proper theater show. The people of Keeler adjusted to seeing their lady doctor on the arm of the Flying Whitekes owner. There were a few raised eyebrows and whispered comments, but most folks seemed genuinely happy for them both. About time Zav found someone, Martha Wilkins declared at the church picnic. Those children need a mother and the town needs its doctor. Seems like a perfect arrangement to me. Zara wasn't quite ready to think in terms of arrangements, but she couldn't deny the happiness that filled her when she was with Zav and the children. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she felt like she belonged somewhere not just as a doctor, but as a woman. One golden September evening, Zav invited Zara for a private ride, just the two of them. They rode into the foothills above the ranch, where a small meadow offered a spectacular view of the valley below. It's beautiful, Zara said as they dismounted. You can see all the way to Owens Lake. Sarah and I used to ride up here sometimes, Zav said, spreading a blanket on the grass. She called it our thinking spot. Zara hesitated. If this was your special place with her, it was, and now I'm sharing it with you. He took her hands. Sarah will always be part of my past, part of who I am, but you're my present, Zara, and I hope my future. With that, he knelt before her and pulled a small box from his pocket. Xavier Young, what are you doing? Zara gasped. Something I've been thinking about for weeks. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small diamond. I love you, Zara Anderson. I love your brilliant mind, your gentle hands, your kind heart. I love the way you care for my children as if they were your own. I love the doctor you are and the woman behind the medicine. He took a deep breath. Will you marry me? Will you join our family, not just as a doctor, but as my wife and a mother to my children? Zara's heart felt too full for her chest. This man, these children, they had become everything to her in the few short months since she'd arrived in Keeler. Yes, she said, tears filling her eyes. Yes, I will marry you. Zav slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. The children are going to be ecstatic, he said, resting his forehead against hers. They've been dropping hints for weeks, Zara laughed. Not very subtle hints either. Jack asked me outright last week if I was going to be their new mother. And what did you tell him? That such things were for grown-ups to decide, she smiled. But I think he knew I wanted to say yes. They stayed in the meadow until the sun began to set, making plans for their future. Zara would continue her medical practice, of course. They would add rooms to the ranch house to serve as her home office, so she wouldn't have to travel into town every day. For serious cases, she would still use the town clinic. And we'll need to add a nursery, Zav said, a twinkle in his eye. A nursery? Zara raised an eyebrow. Are you planning something I should know about, Mr. Young? Just thinking ahead, Dr. Anderson. I'd like more children someday, if you're amenable. The thought of having a child with Zav, a child of her own, was both thrilling and terrifying. I'd like that too, she admitted. Though perhaps not right away. Let me get used to being a mother to your three first. We have time, he agreed, pulling her close. All the time in the world. They rode back to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Zara's heart lighter than it had been in years. When they arrived, the children were waiting eagerly on the porch. Did you ask her, Pa? Emma called as soon as they came into view. Did she say yes? Zav laughed. So much for our surprise announcement. They knew, Zara asked, dismounting. Tommy might have helped me pick out the ring, Zav admitted, and I may have asked all three of them for their blessing. The children rushed forward as Zara and Zav approached the house. Emma threw her arms around Zara's waist. Are you going to be our mother now? Zara knelt to be at eye level with the girl. If you'll have me, yes. We chose you, Jack said solemnly. Pa said we could help decide. Zara looked up at Zav, surprised. He shrugged a bit sheepishly. I might have told them that, since they'd be gaining a mother, they should have some say in who it was. Tommy stepped forward, more reserved than his siblings but with a small smile playing around his lips. We voted unanimously. My children chose you, Zav said softly, helping Zara to her feet. And so did I. The wedding took place in late October after the fall roundup was complete and before winter set in. The entire town of Keeler turned out for the celebration, held in the churchyard under a canopy of autumn leaves. Zara wore a cream-colored dress that Martha Wilkins had helped her select on a trip to Bishop, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Zav was resplendent in a new black suit, his blue eyes shining with pride and joy. Emma served as maid of honor, wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes and carrying a small posy of late-blooming flowers. Tommy and Jack stood with their father, looking uncomfortable but proud in their Sunday best. Reverend Powell performed the ceremony, speaking of partnership and commitment, of blending families and building futures. When he pronounced them man and wife, Zav kissed Zara with such tenderness that several ladies in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. The reception afterward was a true Western celebration, with tables laden with food contributed by every family in Keeler, music provided by local fiddlers, and dancing that lasted well into the night. Are you happy, Mrs. Young? Zav asked as they danced under the stars. Deliriously, Zara replied, though I believe it's Dr. Young now. Dr. Young, he corrected with a smile, my brilliant, beautiful wife. Later, after the children had been sent home with Maria and the last guests had departed, Zav led Zara to the hotel where they would spend their wedding night before leaving for a brief honeymoon in San Francisco. In the privacy of their room, with moonlight spilling through the window, Zav took Zara in his arms and kissed her deeply. I never thought I'd find love again, he murmured against her lips. Never thought I'd find someone who would love not just me but my children too. And I never thought I'd find a man who would value me as both a woman and a doctor, Zara replied, running her fingers through his hair. You're a rare breed, Xavier Young. We're a matched pair then, he said, his eyes darkening with desire. Because you, Zara Young, are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Their honeymoon passed in a blissful whirl of sightseeing, fine dining, and passionate nights. Zara had visited San Francisco once before, but seeing it through Zav's eyes, his wonder at the bustling city, his appreciation for its beauty made it a new experience altogether. When they returned to Keeler, they found the ranch house transformed. The promised additions had been started during their absence, a surprise wedding gift from the townspeople and neighboring ranchers. The framework for Zara's home office and a new bedroom suite was already in place. "Welcome home, Dr. Young," Emma said proudly as she showed Zara the changes. "Tommy and I helped design your office. There's going to be shelves for all your medical books and a special cabinet for your instruments." "It's perfect," Zara said, hugging the girl. "Absolutely perfect." Life settled into a new rhythm. Zara divided her time between the town clinic and her home office, while Zav ran the ranch with Tommy's increasing help. Emma continued to assist Zara whenever possible, soaking up medical knowledge like a sponge, and Jack attached himself to his new mother with unwavering devotion. There were challenges, of course. The first time Zara had to discipline Jack for climbing onto the roof of the barn, she worried she'd overstepped her bounds. But Zav backed her completely, and Jack, after initial sulking, seemed to accept her authority more fully afterward. When Tommy struggled with a particularly difficult mathematics assignment and snapped at Zara for trying to help, she gave him space rather than pushing. Later, he sought her out to apologize and ask for assistance, a breakthrough in their sometimes prickly relationship. And when Emma experienced her first monthly bleeding, she came straight to Zara with her questions and fears, treating her with a trust that brought tears to Zara's eyes. Through it all, Zav was her partner and her rock. They talked through problems together, celebrated victories together, and fell more deeply in love with each passing day. Their nights were a revelation to Zara, who had never imagined physical love could be so tender and passionate at the same time. In February, just as the first signs of spring were appearing, Zara made a discovery that both thrilled and terrified her. "Zav," she said one evening as they sat before the fire after the children had gone to bed, "I have something to tell you." He looked up from the book he'd been reading, concern immediately crossing his face at her serious tone. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, at least I believe so." She took a deep breath. "I'm going to have a baby." For a moment, Zav seemed frozen, his eyes wide. Then his face split into a grin of pure joy, and he crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "A baby? You're sure?" "As sure as medical training can make me. The child should arrive in late September or early October." Zav whooped, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around, then immediately set her down, looking chagrined. "Should I not do that? Will it harm the baby?" Zara laughed. "The baby is fine. I'm not made of glass, Zav. But you'll be careful, take care of yourself." "Maybe cut back on your patients. I'll be sensible," she promised. "But I intend to continue working as long as I can. Many women work right up until their time." Zav nodded, though she could see he was already worrying. "When should we tell the children?" "Soon. They'll be excited, I think." Excited doesn't begin to cover it. They've been asking for a baby brother or sister since we got married. They told the children the next morning at breakfast. As predicted, their reaction was enthusiastic, though Tommy tried to maintain a cool exterior despite the grin that kept breaking through. "I hope it's a brother," Jack declared. "Girls are too bossy." "I hope it's a sister," Emma countered, "so I can teach her to be a doctor like Mother." Zara's heart swelled at Emma's casual use of Mother, a title the girl had adopted shortly after the wedding. "Brother or sister, the baby will be perfect," Zev said firmly, "and we'll all help take care of it, right?" The children nodded solemnly, and Zara felt a rush of love for this family that had become hers in every way that mattered. The months passed, and Zara's body changed with the growing life inside her. She continued to see patients, though she gradually reduced her workload as her pregnancy progressed. The town hired a young male doctor to assist her, Dr. Jenkins, fresh from medical school in Boston, and Zara found she enjoyed mentoring him almost as much as treating patients herself. By August, she was confined mostly to home visits and consultations. The summer heat made her uncomfortable, and the baby was active, kicking and turning frequently. "I think he's going to be a cowboy like his pa," Zav said one night as he felt the baby's movements beneath his hand. "Strong legs for riding, or she's going to be a dancer," Zara countered with a smile. "Either way, I wish this child would settle down and let me sleep occasionally." Zav kissed her forehead. "Not much longer now." The baby arrived on a stormy night in late September, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Zara had been uncomfortable all day, but dismissed it as the normal discomforts of late pregnancy. When her waters broke during dinner, however, there was no denying that the time had come. Martha Wilkins was summoned to assist, along with Mrs. Holloway, the midwife, and Dr. Jenkins. Xav paced the hallway outside their bedroom, occasionally poking his head in until Martha shooed him out, telling him he was making everyone nervous. The labor was long and difficult. By midnight, Zara was exhausted, her medical knowledge giving her an all-too-clear understanding of the potential complications. "The baby is positioned awkwardly," she told Mrs. Holloway between contractions. "It needs to turn." The midwife nodded, her experienced hands feeling Zara's abdomen. "You're right, doctor. We'll try to help it along." Through the night they worked, Zara alternating between the role of patient and doctor, giving instructions even as she struggled through the pain. Near dawn, when her strength was nearly gone, the baby finally shifted into the correct position. "I can see the head," Mrs. Holloway announced. "One more big push, doctor." With a final, monumental effort, Zara brought her child into the world. The baby's cry, strong and indignant, was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "A boy," Martha said, tears in her eyes as she wrapped the infant in a clean blanket. "A perfect little boy." When Xav was finally allowed in, he found Zara pale but triumphant, their son cradled in her arms. "He's beautiful," Xav whispered, sitting carefully beside her on the bed. "Just like his mother." The baby had a shock of dark hair like Zara's, and when he briefly opened his eyes, they caught a glimpse of what might become Xav's blue. "What shall we call him?" Zara asked. They had discussed names but hadn't settled on any. Now, looking at their son's face, Xav said, "What about Samuel, after your father?" Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Samuel, yes, that's perfect. Samuel Xavier Young." The children were allowed in briefly to meet their new brother. Emma immediately assumed a protective air, while Tommy looked surprisingly tender as he touched the baby's tiny hand. Jack was frankly curious, asking how the baby had gotten out of Zara's belly and why he was so red. "He's all wrinkly," Jack observed. "So were you when you were born," Xav told him. "All babies are. Was I that small, even smaller? You were born early, remember, but you grew strong just like Samuel will." As the children filed out, promising to be quiet so mother and baby could rest, Zara felt a contentment she had never known before. Her family complete, perfect, and entirely unexpected when she'd stepped off that stagecoach 18 months ago. "Happy?" Xav asked, seeing her expression. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied, leaning against his solid strength as their son slept in her arms. "When I came to Keeler, I was looking for a place to practice medicine, not a family, and now you have both." "Now I have both," she agreed, "and I wouldn't change a thing." 5 years later, the Young family gathered on the porch of the Flying Y, watching as a rider approached from town. Samuel, now a sturdy 5-year-old with his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes, bounced excitedly. "Is it here? Is it here?" he asked, tugging on Zara's skirt. "We'll know soon enough," she told him, adjusting the baby girl on her hip. 2-year-old Sarah, named for Xav's first wife in a gesture that had sealed forever the place of the past in their present, gurgled and reached for her brother. The rider was Tommy, now 17 and working as the ranch foreman when he wasn't attending the newly established high school in Bishop. He galloped into the yard and dismounted in one fluid motion, waving an envelope. "It came, Mother," he called. "The letter from the Women's Medical College." Emma, 15 now and tall like her father, rushed from the house. "Is it for me? Did they get my inquiry?" Tommy handed over the envelope with a flourish. "See for yourself." Emma tore it open, her eyes flying over the page. "They're sending an application packet. And information about scholarships for Western students." Her face glowed with excitement. "They say with my preliminary education and your recommendation, Mother, I stand an excellent chance of admission in 3 years." Zara smiled at her stepdaughter's enthusiasm. From the moment Emma had declared her intention to become a doctor, Zara had supported her dream, arranging additional studies and practical experience. "That's wonderful news, darling," she said. "Though we'll miss you terribly when you go east." "I'll come back," Emma promised. "Keeler needs doctors." Jack, now 11 and the spitting image of his father, rolled his eyes. "Keeler's already got 2 doctors, you and Dr. Jenkins. And there'll be room for 1 more by the time Emma's trained," Xav said, coming from the barn where he'd been checking on a new foal. This town keeps growing. It was true. In the years since Zara had arrived, Keeler had nearly doubled in size. The silver mine had reopened under new management, bringing jobs and families. The railroad was planning a spur line that would connect the town directly to markets in the north and south. And Zara's reputation as an excellent physician had drawn patients from surrounding communities. "Pa, can I ride into town with Tommy?" Jack asked. "He promised to take me to the new ice cream parlor. If your chores are done," Zav replied, "and be back before dark." As Jack raced to the barn to saddle his pony and Tommy followed at a more sedate pace, Zav put his arm around Zara, careful not to disturb little Sarah. "Remember when you first came to Keeler?" he asked. "When Tommy fell from that horse? How could I forget? It was the beginning of everything." Emma, still clutching her letter, smiled at her parents. "I'm going to write back immediately. Can I use your desk, Mother?" "Of course. The stationery is in the bottom drawer." As Emma hurried inside, Samuel tugged at his father's pant leg. "Pa, tell the story again, about how you met Mother." Zav laughed and lifted the boy onto his shoulders. "Well, son, it all started when your brother Tommy tried to break a wild colt all by himself. And Dr. Anderson came to fix him," Samuel continued, clearly having heard the story many times. "And then Jack and Emma got the measles." "That's right," Zara said, shifting Sarah to her other hip. "I had to stay at the ranch to take care of them. And then you fell down because you were so tired," Samuel added, "and Pa carried you to bed." "He certainly got the story memorized," Zav chuckled. "And then you got married and had me," Samuel concluded triumphantly. "That's the short version," Zara agreed, smiling up at her husband. "But there's a line your father said that always stayed with me. Do you remember, Zav?" He nodded, his eyes soft with memory. "My children chose you," I said. And it was true. They saw what I was just beginning to realize, that you were exactly what we all needed. As the sun began to set over the Sierra Nevada, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Zav leaned down to kiss his wife, their youngest daughter between them and their son perched on his shoulders. "Best decision we ever made," he murmured against Zara's lips. She agreed. "For a bunch of amateurs, your children made an excellent medical diagnosis." "And what was that?" "That this family needed a doctor," she smiled. "Not just for your bodies, but for your hearts. And you, Dr. Young, what did you need?" Zara looked around at the home they had built together, the thriving ranch, the medical practice that had brought healing to so many, and most of all, the family that had embraced her so completely. "Exactly this," she said simply. "All of this, all of you." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the Young family, all 7 of them, bound by love if not always by blood, went inside to the warmth and light of home.